Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Here's Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. A former Prime Minister in Trinidad and Tobago believes the focus on power has the two major parties divided. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Thursday, 14th September 2023, brought to you in association with our friends at Antillian Group. Details when we return.
Believe in our strength, we'll stand by you. Protection from all, perils big and small. Reassurance we give, it's so glad to see. Peace of mind, that's our service guarantee. We look after all our family. Yes, we do at every opportunity.
Antillian Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.
Welcome back. Former Prime Minister and former leader of the United National Congress in Trinidad and Tobago, Basdio Pandey, has his own take on why there isn't better collaboration between the government and the opposition. He believes the focus is on power rather than country. TV6's Alicia Boucher has more in this report.
President Christine Kangaloo has called for more collaboration between parliamentarians. It was only one of the many issues she addressed during her speech. Former leader of the United National Congress, Basdio Pandey, is weighing in on that. Anything stood out for you?
I think the president's speech ought to be a statement of what the government is going to do in the next session. That is how it happens under the Westminster system when the Queen addresses the Parliament. But poor thing, what can she do? She has no power to do anything, really.
Mr. Pandey, who also held the reins of power as Prime Minister, reflects on the relationship he had with the late Prime Minister Patrick Manning in light of the President's call for greater collaboration.
What would that consultation, in terms of apt consultation between the opposition and the government look like? What should it look like?
Well, the way Manning and I consulted one another when we were doing things.
Mr. Pandey, what do you think is causing that breakdown in consultation between both sides?
Ignorance. That's also both sides are concerned only with holding on to power. And if you want power and I want power, we can't cooperate. If you want the same thing, we can't cooperate. The system needs to change.
That system he's referring to is the Constitution. Mr. Pandey believes it is necessary in order for the country to get the results that are desired. He calls the Constitution an imported one and says it should instead be tailored to this country.
First of all, there is no separation of powers between the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. I heard your Minister of National Security condemning the magistrates. Now, where is the separation of powers? And the separation of powers is necessary for the safety of the people.
Opposition leader Kamla Persad-Bissessar, who took over from Mr. Pandey, has responded to her predecessor on his view that a struggle for power between both sides is causing the lack of collaboration in Parliament.
Do you at all agree with that statement?
Mr. Pandey will always be Mr. Pandey. I wish him good luck.
Alicia Boucher, TV6 News.
In her first address to members of the House of Representatives and the Senate, assembled together at the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, President Christine Kangaloo called on them to put aside their political differences to find legislative solutions to the crime challenge facing the Republic. Jewel Brown of TV6 News reports.
During the ceremonial opening of the new session of Parliament, there was a moment that saw the opposition leader, Kamla Persad-Bissessar, and the former opposition leader, Basdio Pandey, seemingly putting aside any possible differences that began during one of their party's internal elections a few years ago. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley also greeted Mr. Pandey, who is also a former Prime Minister. Those moments occurred before President Christine Kangaloo delivered her first address to members of the Senate and the House of Representatives assembled together. And the President called for unity in the lower and upper houses beyond the brief moments such as that had occurred on Monday when local government minister Faris Al-Rawi greeted members of the opposition, including Mayaro MP Rushton Parry, before the arrival of the head of state.
I hope that there can be greater collaboration across the aisle, particularly where legislative and other measures designed to help us fight crime are concerned. The urgency is obvious. The pain and the suffering are unbearable. These alone should drive parliamentarians to put aside their party rivalries, join hands across the aisle, and collaborate on how to stem crime and criminal conduct.
The President also called for collaboration among the parliamentarians to enact laws that, in her words, both protect and advance the nation's culture and artistic expressions.
In particular, I hope that it will be seen fit for there to be an urgent parliamentary intervention that results at long last in the steel pan being firmly and irrevocably declared our national instrument. Those in the industry will tell you that giving the steel pan formal and official national instrument status is critical to opening doors for the industry in international markets.
President Kangaloo also expressed her hope for the appearance of additional legislation that helps further entrench the nation's place in the modern age, including in areas such as persons with disabilities. The head of state, who is a former MP, senator, and cabinet member for the PNM, and a former president of the Senate, defended the parliament against criticisms often levied against it by members of the public.
Some of the cynicism surrounding parliamentarians has certainly been earned. We do not always conduct ourselves in accordance with the standing orders of the House or of the Senate. Truthfully, sometimes we go too far and descend to depths of which we should be ashamed. But equally truthfully, the work that parliamentarians, particularly elected parliamentarians, do is fundamental to the well-being of our society. And that kind of work is, I fear, also underappreciated.
After the President's address, both houses of Parliament adjourned to a date to be fixed. Jewel Brown, TV6 News.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick, in association with our friends at
Antillean Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.
The Association of Caribbean Media Workers, ACM, on Monday issued a statement condemning the shooting outside the offices of the Nationwide News Network, a media house in Jamaica, last Friday. The ACM is calling for the police to conduct a swift and impartial investigation into the matter. Andre Huey of SKN Newsline has this report.
The statement said, quote, ACM views the shooting incident as an assault on all the press in Jamaica. Any assault on the media, verbal or otherwise, should not be tolerated and should be condemned by all and sundry. Our media workers, especially our journalists and others who work directly in news gathering, should be allowed to do their jobs without fear or intimidation, end quote. The ACM said it held a special meeting with the Press Association of Jamaica, recommitted to providing support to our colleagues affected by this act, and will be in contact with regional as well as international partners bringing attention to this act. Terror struck shortly after 4 p.m. when a lone gunman opened fire in the parking lot of the Nationwide News Network at around 4:30 p.m. on Friday afternoon. Reports indicate that 3 shots were discharged in the parking lot area, causing damage to a vehicle's window. Fortunately, no one sustained injuries during the attack, although employees were visibly shaken by the incident.
Greater insight into the oversight of the Integrity Commission was gained on Tuesday as the membership of the Parliamentary Committee was presented with an alternative method to assist disclosure. Joel Kraskill of CVM Live reports on Tuesday's sitting.
Based on the arduous task of assessing the over 40,000 declarations the Integrity Commission currently receives from public sector employees, the body proposed this adjustment.
Whilst there is no argued best approach for the selection of public officials to file statutory declarations, a risk-based approach, which is informed by jurisdictional peculiarities and the resources available, would be suited for the Jamaican model. In the foregoing regard, it is recommended that a detailed review of the public bodies will be undertaken to determine high-risk positions and the eventual abolition of the use of income threshold, but we're not there yet, as the basis for determining who should file.
A process that has the potential to impact the political fortunes of those it engages is being recommended for streamlining by the Commission along the lines of risk.
Our recommendation was to increase the threshold from 3.5 to 7 million. But following consultation with the Ministry of Finance, the AG chambers and other public bodies, we have landed at a recommended figure of $12 million, and the commissioners agreed with that new threshold.
However, concerns still persist, even at the parliamentary level, with the admission from Juliet Holness that several of their members remain uncertain about the existing process.
I would ask that the parliamentarians be trained. Since 2016, I became a parliamentarian, and I know for a fact we have not had a training. So I would welcome a training for our session of parliamentarians. I know you have done the cabinet, but not MPs generally, and particularly when you have so many new members of parliament.
Committee Chairman Ed Bartlett also shared his preliminary reservations with the proposal.
There is a good argument, I think, for a methodology which will make a more manageable number, be there for review. But what you don't want is for the categories to be so structured that it allows for persons who should be declaring.
Joel Crosskill, CVM News.
We now join HGP's Renata Burnett with two items of the network's regional roundup.
The Secretariat of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, has reiterated its commitment to continue working closely with member states, institutions, and other health partners to promote and advocate for health policies that will promote healthier communities for all citizens in the region. The regional body made the statement on Saturday to mark Caribbean Wellness Day that has been a landmark activity in the region for the past 15 years. Caribbean Wellness Day followed a 2007 decision made by the Conference of Heads of Government of CARICOM, reflected in the Port of Spain Declaration, uniting to stop the epidemic of chronic non-communicable diseases, that the second Saturday in September should be observed annually as Caribbean Wellness Day. Over the years, member states have extended their activities to complement health advocacy and promotion strategies in their national health programs. Power through collective action was agreed as the overreaching theme for Caribbean Wellness Day from 2020 to 2024. And finally, with some devastating news, rescuers in Morocco are searching for survivors from Friday's powerful earthquake. More than 2,100 people are confirmed dead, and rescuers warn the toll is still expected to rise. The worst destruction has been in isolated mountain areas, which are difficult to access. Residents have described whole villages suffering damage and rescuers unable to retrieve bodies from rubble. In Marrakech, the nearest major city, many residents spent a second night sleeping on the streets, too afraid to return to their homes. Historic sites in the popular tourist destination have been damaged. Meanwhile, Morocco's King Mohammed VI declared 3 days of mourning and ordered mosques nationwide to hold funeral prayers on Sunday. That's all for now. Thank you for watching. Until next time.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel for daily regional news and more, in association with our friends at Antillian Group.
Believe in our strength, we'll stand by you. Protection from all perils, big and small. Reassurance we give, it's so clear to see. Peace of mind, that's our service guarantee. We look after all our family. Yes, we do at every opportunity.
Antillian Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.